The film begins in this port where we see Greg and Heather getting to know the boat called the Tucker Experience. Tucker arrived at the time on his boat with 2 buckets of fishing bait. He then met the boys who weren't lovers but were out on a trip with other friends but fell asleep and didn't make it to SeaWorld. Bruce told them they could have a lot of fun with him because they were going swimming with sharks. One had once bitten him and left a beautiful scar that will never fade anyway. It was a miracle he survived that attack, and it was his fault he didn't heed the warnings that there were sharks nearby. Anyway, Heather and Greg got ready to take a dip with the sharks who were already around savoring what Bruce had thrown into the water there. He convinced Heather to dive in using an ancient relaxation technique. Then he started singing the Baby Shark song that worked much better than the previous one. The 3 of them laughed together and began the most daring experience of their lives. Heather peed in fright at the sight of those biters, but it wasn't noticeable because she was already underwater. Greg took her hand to calm her down and appreciate the beauty of the marine life. Bruce was sure from the start that they were going to love it. Out of nowhere, he stabbed Greg in the neck and pushed him into the sea. Thus begins Dangerous Animals. After that, we find ourselves on this Australian beach where we meet the protagonist of this 2025 film. The surfer's name was Safar, and she was a powerful blonde. Afterward, she waited in a store to be served. She bought several things and went back to her business again. That guy asked if she had cables to jump with the electricity. She replied no, but he had to help him because he saw her stealing from the store and wanted to warn the owner. Although he promised not to be a serial killer, all he wanted was to get to his vehicle, which had dropped him off 10 blocks away. He wasn't a Mormon either. He worked in real estate. Safar politely asked him to keep his mouth shut because she wasn't interested in meeting him. But when he saw he had a board, he opened up a bit to discuss surfing techniques. That's how he officially met Mooses, and it seems he liked her too, as he didn't want him to leave and stopped him by talking about the music they listened to in their free time. Anyway, that same night they went to 4th base in the back of Safar's van. Afterward, they smoked a cigarette. While eating bagels, the protagonist surfed to send a message to the slave-owning society that the human spirit was more alive than ever, even though she believed there was nothing for her in the city. Later, Mooses made some pancakes to surprise her. However, he had already left. Safar was a free spirit and didn't commit to anyone, or perhaps he was afraid that he would end up liking that life and leave behind his great passion: the waves, the sun, the beach, and everything else. Although he forgot the flipper wrench Mooses had thrown out the window while they were being silly, he went looking for one somewhere. It was Tucker's old pickup truck, and he offered to give him one he had. Afterward, he went off to do his own business. Mooses sent him a photo of the breakfast she'd made for him. Safar replied that he had to go now and didn't want her surfing with him. Suddenly, Tucker grabbed her to take her for an unforgettable ride. That way, he knocked her unconscious, then injected her with something and hid her in a bag in the bucket of his pickup truck, remembering to seal her mouth so she wouldn't scream when she woke up. Within minutes, he arrived back at his beloved boat where his neighbor's flea-bitten neighbor was waiting for him, very annoyed. Tucker ignored him and took Safar down to the engine room. The next day, Mooses arrived at the place where she was kidnapped and thought she'd gone surfing ahead, but when he called her, his phone rang behind him because he hadn't brought it with him, and Tucker forgot to break it. The protagonist woke up handcuffed to a stretcher next to Heather, who apologized for the bad smell but had to relieve herself in a bucket. And the sad thing was that no one would be able to hear her cries for help except for Bruce, who reveled in the knowledge that they were suffering. Safar wasn't going to sit idly by and started looking for something to free herself. There she saw a man written on the wall: Bruce caught a fish for lunch. The blonde tried everything to no avail. Heather recounted what she did with Greg, but not what happened next, so as not to scare her new companion. At that moment, Mooses saw Safar's van being towed away, something she would never have allowed, so she knew something else had happened to her. The officer mentioned he was going to file a missing person report on an invisible typewriter. Wink wink. Mooses didn't know the blonde's last name, so they weren't going to be able to help her, so she had to do it herself. Heather regretted taking that gap year before traveling. She argued with her mother, who didn't want her to leave, but didn't listen to her about the dangers of traveling alone and meeting strangers. Safar commented that she should start living her life and not anyone else's because studying law and setting up an office across the street from her house seemed very boring. Instead, she traveled to Australia to get as far away from her adoptive parents as possible. During that time, she noticed that Heather's bra had something metallic that could help them unlock the handcuffs, something she'd been good at since childhood because she used to escape from everywhere. Bruce went in to give them breakfast and some water since it was 1,000 degrees down there. Safar distracted him so he wouldn't notice that Heather wasn't wearing her swimsuit. He wasn't intimidated by her spoiled attitude and told her he knew she was scared to death inside, which was fine, but he still had to act to get out of this messed up mess before he ended up like Greg. However, both girls started feeling dizzy from the drinks Tucker gave them before falling asleep. She congratulated Safar for being a fighter. Afterwards, she woke up on the deck just like before, but more screwed up. Bruce had set up a video recorder for his show there. He commented that God wasn't in the sky but in the depths of the sea. In fact, he had seen the protagonist surf a couple of times and thought it was pretty cool. Afterward, he cut off a lock of Heater's hair, woke her up, and prepared her to meet her shark friends with hundreds of sharp teeth and a super developed sense of smell to lure them away. He had thrown more bait right where he planned to land Heater. It was a gruesome end for the poor girl who had no chance of escape. Tucker commented that this was the most incredible show of all. Fortunately, Safar's turn would be the following night. She was speechless after seeing her fellow inmate die in such a cruel way. At that moment, the blonde saw a hidden name on the wall, while Tucker wrapped a lock of Heater's hair around the fishhook she had saved on the tape of her death, and what a collection she had. It's worth mentioning that she wasn't going to stop. In fact, she was already preparing to do the biggest one with the surfer who couldn't get out of her handcuffs in the morning. We see Moose is still sad because he didn't know what happened to Safar and couldn't even surf with his friends because he would have loved to be with her enjoying that warm morning. Tucker entered her cell with food, but seeing her listless, he asked where the fighter he met at the beginning was. The blonde demanded that he get out of her sight. Bruce explained that if sharks were removed from the marine ecosystem, the balance would be lost, and the weaker creatures would be free to do whatever they wanted. Safar told her she was a cowardly insect that killed women for fun, unlike the species he admired which had survived through pure instinct and evolution. He suggested she start using the bucket, so she wouldn't live in a hovel. Safar came up with the idea of making a sharp tool to surprise Tucker the next time she came down. After watching his favorite TV show, he prepared the mixture to put her to sleep. She pretended to be dreaming about angels and stuck the plastic near her neck. Bruce was knocked out when he hit the bed rail but woke up just in time, preventing the blonde from escaping, and injected the injection into her leg. Now he only had seconds before he fell unconscious. He tried to contact someone on the radio. In the distance, she saw a boat with many young people having fun, and Bruce went out to catch her before she dropped her camera. He did so to get even, and then jumped into the ocean, not caring how weak he was feeling. Bruce had to throw a grappling hook to bring her back to the surface, or she would have drowned in the morning. The search was carried out thanks to Mooses, who insisted to authorities that Safar had suspiciously disappeared. He then checked the beach's public cameras on his phone, specifically the one in the parking lot where he saw his friend's van that night. And minutes later he saw Bruce's old truck. The only clue he had was the logo of his business. She woke up again in her cell screaming non-stop. When she realized she was close to the coast, Bruce decided to go back because he no longer had cameras to record the good aquatic kills. His neighbor told him that last night some rich kids went out on another boat to have fun, but Bruce wasn't interested in anyone. But Safar Mooses called him on his phone, but it was off, so she went to check on him. She wasn't going to find him either, since he was in a store looking for a video recorder. He needed to get an old Colt urgently, or his sharks would starve to death. Soon Mooses arrived at the port where the killer's boat was located. Unfortunately, the killer was stuck in traffic. There he got distracted by the sight of a woman he could use as bait, but the surfer was much better, and he refocused. He also knew he couldn't leave her alone for long because she was quite cunning. Mooses heard her downstairs and forced his way in, unaware that Bruce was about to return. She ordered him to find a tool to unlock the handcuffs. However, Tucker surprised him upstairs and beat him to a pulp, preventing him from calling 911. Mooses managed to hit him with the camera. Once on the ground, he began to choke him, but the neighbor managed to stop him from being killed, and Bruce thanked her for not letting anyone know what he was doing. Then he scared the puppy away and continued with the show. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough fuel to set sail. Anyway, he planned to go to that nearby spot, knowing no one would bother them. Later, Mooses woke up next to Safar there. He lamented ruining the rescue plan. Anyway, he was very close. If it weren't for that man at that moment. They heard the boat stop. The boy wanted to know why she ran away from home that night. She replied that she was better off alone. Besides, he didn't know her. Mooses thought the opposite. She was a tough woman hiding her tenderness, so she wouldn't get hurt. That was why she ran away from everywhere. Bruce decided the surfer would be the next one to be devoured by the sharks before the main event starring Safar began, and never stops looking for him. The blonde even offered to be the first. He then ordered his friend to stay as still as possible so the sharks wouldn't sense his fear. Incredible, but it worked, and they left him alone as if he were Aquaman's cousin. For this reason, Tokyo had to stab him several times in the abdomen to make him bleed, so the sharks couldn't ignore him. However, Bruce had to stop when he saw a helicopter in the distance. He took the boys down to the cell and prayed to God that the rescuers would keep flying. At that moment, Safar tried to wriggle out of the mess for the 20th time to help Mooses stop bleeding, but it seemed his fate was sealed. As well, to avoid it, he bent his thumb to free his hand from the handcuffs. Bruce told her that the boy wasn't right for her because he was too soft and she was too strong, just like him. Like sharks, solitary creatures who look out for themselves and don't give up in the face of any difficulty. No way. Safar couldn't free himself. As a desperate measure, he bit off his thumb several times to save him before it was too late. Meanwhile, Bruce prepared the injection. The Baby Shark song played upon disembarking. He found Safar's finger. Safar surprised him by locking him in the cell, but Tokyo had another way to open it. She managed to turn on the boat to go somewhere else, but Tokyo immediately turned it off anyway. Those guys weren't that far away. Safar defended herself against Bruce with a flare, and wasn't going to stop until she defeated him. But neither was he, which made this confrontation even more interesting. She won the first round. She jumped off the boat and swam away from the assassin, who could no longer shoot her, and he had to use the emergency boat to. He took her back to his boat. Muses would now be the front, and only spectator took her through water with airbait at her to wake her up. At that, she commented that what she liked most about marling fish wasn't their speed, but their fight to avoid getting caught despite being very strong and not caring about having a hook stuck in them. At that moment, she saw a giant shark approaching and felt it was going to be the best show of her entire career. Safar tried to stay calm with her hand raised so it wouldn't feel her blood, but when she noticed it approaching, she kicked it, which managed to push it away. Bruce encouraged him to eat it. Now she managed to catch the harpoon that fell into the water and prepared to attack the shark, which suddenly disappeared from the water. Safar used the tool to climb up with the strength of one arm. Bruce understood that the protagonist would never give up. She felt limp, but since she was now free of the harness, she dived down to face the predator without fear. Or who knows, afterward, he climbed onto the back of the boat in complete silence. Meanwhile, Tucker wondered where his beloved marling went. He didn't see that coming. The shark came back for him and ate him in one bite in slow motion. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. However, the harpoon cable dragged Safar, and it was his fault for not letting go of his weapon after shooting Bruce. Thus, the only survivor in this story was Moses. It's a lie. He also died from the bleeding. Afterward, the protagonist returned to the boat where she tried to get him to react, but he was very weak, so she had to ask the kids at the party for help with the last flare. Finally, she asked him to wake up, because now she understood there was something for her in the city. He and anyone else returns from the dead. Like, if you like the mess, come on, that's how Dangerous Animals ends. There you go, friends. This is the movie I brought you this time. I hope you liked it, and if not, don't forget to check out my channel and watch my other videos. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe by clicking the bell.